Okay, so just a quick reminder, the 5, 6, and 5. We've talked about this before. I want to make sure it's clear in everyone's mind. The 5 are, thoughts, emotions, memories, desire, and energy. These are 5. Each one of those has 6 aspects: quantity, quality, direction, dimension, depth, and structure. And we also have these 5: energy activation and utilization, equalization, conservation, revitalization, transmutation. This is called 5, 6, 5. It is my humble request to all of you to please memorize this as much as you can, so you may have it memorized already. So we are currently discussing energy transmutation in the current series. This is very interesting and very, very powerful. Today we're going to examine transmutation with regards to the brain. I do want to cover some neurology as we have been going into this now, and to moderate to more advanced levels of understanding, but nothing that's not understandable, just that it's a sequence of built up from what's come before to where we are now. I'm going to read this paragraph. It's a bit technical, and then we'll break it down into some examples to try to understand it, and that will help us to recognize what is transmutation with regards to the limbic system and the executive functioning within our brain. So, here's what this paragraph says. A potentially destabilizing impulse, anger, fear, sexual arousal, first registers as bottom-up salience in the amygdala, anterior insula, and brainstem arousal nuclei. In successful transmutation, the prefrontal cortex, PFC, recruits these limbic signals within 200 to 400. I'm not sure what the MS stands for. It's milli something. I'll have to look that up. It's within I think it's milliseconds actually. That's what that is. Within 200 to 400 milliseconds, very fast. So if transmutation has actually happened, our prefrontal cortex has a lot of good quality energy available. Its function is better. Its wiring is better. It recruits these limbic signals, the lower level signals, the bottom up salient signals like fear, anger, sexuality, etc. Even all of the other baser instincts. These things are at the more bottom up level, and they're needed also, but it's possible to recruit the power that exists within them very rapidly and very quickly, where the prefrontal cortex becomes more active, shifting processing from threat defense to information integration. I'll talk about this in a moment. Functional MRI shows strengthened ventromedial and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and then that connects to the amygdala. So, amygdala coupling after mindfulness-based reprisal training, indicating a hands-off from autonomic reactivity to reflective guidance. I know it's a mouthful. I'm going to break it all up, and we're going to really try to understand this. The basic point here of what is being presented here is that there is a fundamental change in brain function. We all have brain. We know that the brain is electrochemical system. We know that. But the brain function changes radically, drastically in a true state of transmutation. And that is what is really quite extraordinary. Simply because when the brain function changes, our experience itself changes. Our experience of life changes. Our experience of emotions changes. The TEMDE fundamentally transmute. The transmutation of thoughts, emotions, memory, desire, and energy is within the brain, obviously. It has to be within the brain. Where else would it be? Right? So when we are aiming towards personal excellence, when we're aiming towards self-mastery, we absolutely want to transmute the lower level impulses, lower level activity into much higher level activity, particularly destabilizing impulses. Impulses that destabilize our overall experience need to be recognized. It is a recognition that, these impulses, these thoughts, these emotions, certain feelings, certain memories, certain experiences, certain conversations, etc., are destabilizing me. And then it's creating impulses inside that are further destabilizing because those impulses are coming from the bottom-up salience. Bottom-up salience simply means that the lower regions of the brain, the more primitive regions of the brain are active and they become more predominant, right? So it's in the amygdala, the anterior insula, brainstem, arousal. So for example, human sexuality, which we are aware of obviously, that is within the reticular activation system of the brain. It's within the reticular activation system of the brain, and it is also a bottom-up phenomena. It is a bottom because it's a primitive part of the brain. There's no doubt about that. So the bottom-up response is automatic, fast, and emotional, right? But when energy transmutation happens successfully, a different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, quickly steps in, usually within 200 to 400 milliseconds, which is less than half a second. Look at how fast that can react, how fast that can be active. But to get to that point, all of the previous exercises and ideas presented this year and last year are necessary just to get to this point, where the prefrontal cortex can quickly step in and start pulling energy out of the lower level bottom-up response. The prefrontal cortex, which is our higher brain function, the forehead, kind of where our forehead is here. Excuse me. The PFC helps all of us to pause, think clearly, and choose a wiser, more constructive response rather than just reacting. Now, how interesting is that? See these points carefully. All of us together. We need to pause. When there is activation from bottom-up salience, the ability to pause may sometimes be damaged. We may not even have that ability. Let me talk about that a bit. Give some examples. When a strong impulse comes, let's say an urge let's just use a very simple example, an urge to drink alcohol. If it's a very strong urge, what is that? It's a bottom-up urge, bottom-up salience, that I want this, and it pretty much takes over. It can take over. But if a person has decided, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not against people drinking recreational alcohol or anything like that. I mean, that's up to you if you want to do that. Just using this as an example because it's easy to understand. Right? So when the urge comes, if a person has already decided, I'm letting this go, I don't want to drink anymore, even recreationally, just, if that's the case, then the previous ideas about energy activation, revitalization, conservation, these things are all applicable. But the key here is that impulse is given a pause. We don't act on it right away. Now, same thing is true with language. The same is true with relationships. It's true with all interaction with food, with people, with co-workers. It doesn't matter what the action is. Some pause is required. That pause is very powerful because it allows us to see a bigger picture, allows us to not be immediately reacting, immediately interacting in a way that we may regret later on, right? So that ability to pause comes from the prefrontal cortex, and that allows the second thing to happen, which is to think clearly. And this is all part of transmutation. So there's 3 points here. Pause, then think clearly, and choose a wiser, more constructive response. All right, so these are 3 critical points. Once we are actually doing that, and that's what this is about. This entire 13-week series is to encourage all of us together to actually do this. It sounds very nice to me also. It might sound nice to you, but to actually do this, pause. Take a pause. Don't speak right away. Don't take an action right away. That will be very useful for us. And that will allow us to have much better quality of thought. That's what will happen. If we have better quality of thinking. Now remember, to think clearly means, it's of course the T-E-M-D-E. Think clearly, feel without disturbance. That's a tough one. To feel, to experience emotion without creating turmoil. Sometimes we experience a wide range of emotions, but that doesn't mean we need to be disturbed. So just as there's clear thinking, there can be and there should be a clear flow of emotional experience. Clear flow of emotional experience means best quality of emotional experience given the situation, circumstance at hand. And we have the ability to be in that state by setting up ahead of time, internally, cognitively, with the prefrontal cortex, with better energy, setting up the domain of emotion we want to be in. This is how transmutation actually happens. All of these previous steps are all rolled into this, and they are all interconnected together. Right? So when I am having more energy, better quality stability, things like that, there's more conservation, I am in a better position to choose the domain of TEMDE. The domain of emotions. What is meant by domain? Domain meaning the field within which I want to be in. Domain would mean field. Let's take a physical example. Let's say you go into nature somewhere and there's an open field. You say, this is an open field. I'm going to take a walk for 1 hour in this open field, but not go outside that boundary. That's called a domain. So, the domain. If you're taking notes, write this down, because this is where transmutation really happens in our lives. To absolutely choose the domain of cognition, the domain of emotion, the domain of memory, the domain of desire, that's a big one. And, of course, the amount of energy placed in all of them. Now, let's try to understand this. Let's talk about the domain of emotion. I can say that within the next 10 minutes, and this can be done literally even 5 minutes at a time. It doesn't even have to be an hour. I talk about an hour at a time, but maybe that's even too much. I would just say 5 minutes, like literally 5 minutes. I can choose the domain of my emotion, that I want to be in a very steady emotional space for the next 5 minutes. Can I make that intention in my mind through my agency, through my volition? Yes. But the ability to do that is based on how much energy is conserved, how much energy is revitalized. All the previous stuff you've talked about, all of that is a preparation to do this. Those first 4 stages are a preparation for transmutation. Now, if I'm prepared properly, I will be better able to do this. Otherwise, I may not be able to do it at all, even for 1 minute. Because I'm just overrun. I don't have the development necessary from the last year, from this year so far. Right? But how do I do it? Let's talk about the actual steps. Start 5 minutes. Do 5-minute exercises. Deliberate. I can say that, no, I want to be in a very happy state. Well, how am I going to do that? If I'm not feeling happy, how can I make myself happy? Can I actually choose that? Yes, it is possible to shift, but it doesn't happen right away. It takes some time to do these exercises again. First of all, choose the intention. I want to be in a happy space. Well, I might need some stimuli for that. Might maybe watch a comedy show. Like, for example, sometimes you can watch something like Family Matters or something funny, right? Some funny shows. Yeah, if you watch something funny, lighthearted, it will change the emotion. So the external stimuli will impact the internal emotional state. But are we choosing it freely? Now, I could simply say that I want to be, in a state of thoughts and emotions that really I want to experience mystery. So I'm going to put some mystery movie or a mystery series on Hulu or Netflix, or maybe read a mystery novel, because I want to experience that. Okay, fine. Then choose that, and then say that for the next 1 hour, I just want to be in that, be absorbed in that. Okay, but it's done freely. It's done without reaction. It's not done in a way as an escape from some other emotion or feeling or thought. You see, that is the difference between transmutation versus cyclical reactive change. There is a massive difference between the two. I can put on a Netflix show as a reaction that I'm feeling so tired, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I want to change what I'm feeling, fine. But before I do that, decide what I want to change it to. And that is how eventually mastery level will be obtained in the next 2 years, the year 3 and 4, on the mastery of emotional flow. Do I want to be a master of my emotions? Of course I do. Am I a master of my emotions right now? I don't know that if I am. Maybe to some extent. I have to look at it and really see. But I shouldn't delude myself. I have to see, hour to hour, day to day, where are they all going? And am I choosing the experience I want? That is the whole point of this bottom-up saliency that really changes into a prefrontal cortex top-down regulation. So there's the bottom-up regulation, or bottom-up sometimes dysregulation, really. And then there's the top-down saliency from the prefrontal cortex. And that is an amazing thing. So when we are actually in that state in the present, and I'm telling you, literally 5 minutes at a time, maybe if that's too much, literally 3 minutes, put a clock on, put a timer on, that in the next 5 minutes, I am going to try my best to choose the emotion. I'm going to try to be in that. Yes, now someone might say, I want to actually experience compassion. All right, it's possible to experience compassion. Why not? There's no reason not to. We can experience, if I say I want to experience compassion without getting energetically damaged, that's a big thing. That's a meditative decision. I can say I want to put on news. I can watch the news. Before I put on the news, there's a lot of trouble that is all the time shown every day on these news channels. But before I turn it on, I can sit silently. Or if I'm a religious person, I can sit with the Bible, the Gita, whatever, some holy book, maybe put a candle or a diya, whatever, I can do that. And I can say that I want to be in a meditative state of compassion. I want to experience compassion, but I want to experience it without being reactive and without causing damage to me. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to watch the news and let all that stuff directly enter into me and scramble my inner space like a scrambled egg. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to turn that even on until I'm ready, until I have a prevention shield, until I have an awareness shield, until I am highly energetic, until I'm really clear about how to watch that without bringing it inside and getting tangled up and torn apart by that. And if I cannot do that, that means I'm not even ready to watch. I need to maybe watch maybe literally 30 seconds of it and close my eyes and stabilize myself inside. By breathing techniques, alternate nostril breathing techniques, bring my energies into balance, revitalize them, deal with what I'm seeing. It's not an easy thing. That half an hour of a news show might take 3 hours in a meditative state to learn how to watch that with freedom, with emotional freedom, psychological freedom, and non-entanglement, while there is compassion. How is that possible? Has anybody even online heard of such a thing? You can talk to me about it later when we open up the Q&A. But this is what self-mastery is all about eventually. The ability to watch these different kinds of programs, but to watch them with a preset that, yes, I want to be compassionate, I want to express my love and affection, and I want to do prayer or whatever I want to do while I'm watching the news. I want everyone to be benefited, but I'm not going to allow that stuff that's on there to tear me apart by letting it enter inside my mind and scrambling it. Oh, because that's what's going to happen. Now there's a big problem here. How is that possible? That if I'm going to watch anything, even if I have the best of intentions and I have the best mindset and all that, I'm going to watch stuff and it's going to come inside of me. I cannot prevent that from happening. And it's going to stay inside my mind. What am I going to do with that? So that is where this transmutation phenomena really comes into the picture. And this applies to all experiences, conversations with people, work experiences, going for walks, whatever. It doesn't matter, It could be anything, going to restaurants, going for meetings, going for family gatherings, every experience in life. It has to be reprocessed after it has entered into our memories. The TEM, thought, emotion, memory. I'm using the news thing as an example. 30 minutes of news is watched, maybe a little bit at a time. I'm trying to process it and trying to be in that emotional, that compassionate space without reaction. That sounds very nice. Even right now I'm talking about it, sounds very nice to me. Very good. That doesn't mean that we are actually able to do that. If we are able to do that, we are in an absolute state of mastery. No question about it. But most people have never even thought about doing it. Even if they have thought about it, wouldn't know how to do it. So now how do we actually do this? Now let's go into that. I watch 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and I hit pause. I take steady breath. I notice the change in my breathing by what I've watched for the 5 minutes on the news. I become aware. You can use a 30-minute news show for meditation. Yes, that is how transmutation works. Transmutation is not something in isolation somewhere. We go to retreats and we go to nature and people feel good about that, and that's all beautiful. That should be done. Why not? But it certainly doesn't mean that we cannot use life experiences. In fact, it means, on the contrary, every experience can be used for transmutation. And Sachin here humbly would state, every experience must be used for transmutation if we are aiming towards self-mastery. So how do we do it? Now I've watched 5 minutes. It's inside my memory. I have to be able to process that in a new way. So it is the transmutation of the content of the 5 minutes of memory. These are advanced ideas. Everything we're going to talk about here on out, from now, from the last several weeks all the way until the 7th year, it's all very, very, very advanced stuff that most people have never tried to even do. Now look at this, how tricky this is. The 5 minutes is inside of me. I've watched shows. I've watched the images, the story, whatever it is. It's now inside, and my mind is thinking about it. I'm having a reaction towards. I'm going to have a reaction. How can I not have a reaction? But that's the whole point. Can I have it be processed in a completely new way, that the experience is transmuted inside of me and held in a transmuted form? Now see how this is tricky. To even understand this, or even to explain this, is difficult. 5 minutes I've watched. Let's say I've watched 10 minutes. I have to see that in a much broader light. I have to sit quietly, push pause, see the bigger picture, see the nature of humanity, see what the conflicts going on, and then recognize how people are pulling different, property and land and conflicts and weapons and seeing all of that. Can I remain completely free internally while that stuff is sitting in my memory? Now, what I need to do then is consciously reassert my absolute freedom. In a way, freedom from the entanglement of the content of the memory. I don't want those 10 minutes that I've seen on the ABC News, CBS News, CNN News, or Fox, or whatever. I don't want those 10 minutes to sit inside of me, and I keep churning it, and it absolutely causes all kinds of energy distortion and distortion of my mind. No, I don't want that at all. I can be compassionate, I can be loving, I can have the best intention for the world and for the problems of the world, but the mixture of that mess that is there is not to cause disturbance to me. Now somebody will say, is that even possible? Is that even possible, to have an input inside the memory structure without it causing any disturbance? Sachin would say yes, but we have to be ready for that. We need to know how to get to that point. And that's why we do this 5 minutes at a time. And that's the exercise. This exercise is to be done this week. This is the exercise to do 5 minutes at a time. Try with the news shows. Try with something on Netflix. Try with the conversation with a friend. Try with somebody on the phone or on the internet. Whatever. Do it 5 minutes at a time, and then sit quietly. Sitting quietly and asserting, point number one, I'm free from this experience. This experience is in my memory. I am going to utilize that to gain wisdom, to gain knowledge, to gain insight, to express my compassion, but I'm not going to allow it to damage me. Absolutely not. That doesn't mean I'm not compassionate. If it damages me, my compassion will also be damaged, and I will become reactive and angry and bitter, and all that stuff will happen also. See, these are really carefully, how can I say this? All of this really is a matter of considerable contemplative meditation. It's not to be rushed. It's not to be rushed. Sometimes we're just sitting by ourselves and our own memories, there's so much stuff in our memories, things will pop up from there and we will get lost in that right away. We all know this. We all experience it. Maybe even today, maybe even on a daily basis we experience this. Who doesn't experience it? But that does not have to be the status quo. The memories can come up, but now I can say, oh, this memory is coming up, but I've looked at it, I've examined, can I learn from it? What have I gained from it? I am not my memories, the memories are there. What is the experience I want from that? I have to choose. Because people don't choose, they don't experience or do not assert their free will to say, I can choose my experience. Then we just get lost, and then we create a lot of damage, and then say, I'm so tired out, I'm so burned out, I'm so sick of thinking about the same thing again. These are the kinds of statements so many people make. My mind is just spinning. Of course it's going to spin. What else is going to happen? What else can happen? It's a mechanism. It's a mechanism that can really be stabilized. It's stabilization and harmonization. Stabilization, harmonization, purification is all possible one experience at a time. And this is not to be rushed. No, and when we don't rush this, when we actually try this, then something quite amazing happens. Then we are in that best position to pause, think clearly, feel without disturbance. Compassion without entanglement is non-reactive compassion. That is in the emotional dimension. We can use our memories for extraordinary benefit, and we can make best choices. We can choose constructively. We can choose wisely. We can choose responses rather than simply reacting. And brain scans, fMRI scans, show that after doing all of this type of exercise, which is really, mindfulness is part of all of this, but maybe this is a more elaborate way to put it. It's just different ways different teachers are putting these things. Emotional reframing and all that. All that's involved in this. The connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala becomes stronger. Our brain becomes more connected internally. This means that the brain is learning how to pass control from emotional reactivity to calm reasoning more quickly and reliably. I hope that makes sense. That yes, most people are just reacting emotionally, but we want to pass the control from emotional reactivity to calm reasoning. And it is able to do that more quickly and reliably. 2 points. 2 very important points. Why quickly? Because the preparation has been done. That's the reason why. You can see it on the screen here. Let me see if I can do a screen. Give me just a moment here. Let's do this here. Yeah, you can see it on the right side here. You can see it at the bottom there. That brain scans show that after practicing all of these ideas, mindfulness and emotional reframing and all this transmutation idea that we're really talking about, I mean, I would just say, this is just only my humble commentary. Mindfulness and emotional reframing are they're just superficial compared to what we're talking about. This is at a much, much greater level, but that's only my own opinion on that. It's the same thing, but there's a certain depth to what we're talking about that maybe even emotional reframing is not really enough by itself. But anyway, it's all right to say that. The connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala becomes stronger. The amygdala that's where you've got the lower brain. You've got the brainstem and the anterior insula, the bottom up salience. The bottom up salience is transformed. It's transformed. That's amazing that the brain itself is changing. And there's 3 words here, which you may have heard me say this some time back: neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, and synaptogenesis. Right? These are 3 points to keep in mind, that the new synapses are growing, new neurons are growing, neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, that the brain is rewiring itself. All of this fundamental change in the brain has been researched very well. So we go from emotional reactivity to calm reasoning more quickly. We can go into that calm reasoning at a much faster rate when all the preparation is done, as we have been saying, because we can think, we can pause, and we can, we don't react so rapidly. And also that the calm reasoning is reliable. It happens again and again and again in the same way. Amazing ideas, right? So an intense feeling first hits your brain like an alarm. But if you're trained through mindfulness and reflection and transmutation exercises, your wise mind takes over almost instantaneously, helping you respond instead of just reacting. It all sounds very good. It's a matter of practice. It's a matter of realization that this is possible for us. It is a matter of first understanding the concepts clearly. In the slide itself, this is written in a bit technical way, right? And then in the notes, we've got the more a little bit easier way to understand this. And then there's a lot of examples here. We've got a bunch of examples here. Let's look at these examples. The amygdala is what? It's like the fire alarm. It senses something might be dangerous and blares out loud, even if it's just smoke from burnt toast, right? But the prefrontal cortex is like the firefighter. It arrives quickly, checks the scene, and decides whether it's a real fire or just steam. In energy transmutation, you let the firefighter take charge instead of panicking with the alarm, right? So what's the moral of the story there? The analogy: your brain can learn to stop overreacting by checking the facts first. Check the facts. Don't react right away. So these are just simple examples here. There's a whole bunch of them. Spinning car versus stabilizing steering wheel, right? The emotional brain, the insula, the amygdala is what? It's like a car hitting a slick road, sliding, spinning out of control. The PFC, prefrontal cortex. Stabilizer. It's a stabilizer. It's a traction control. It kicks in quickly, slows the spin, and guides the car back on course. It's a very simple analogy. So mindful practice strengthens this steering mechanism so you don't crash emotionally. What's the moral there? Even if emotions spin out quickly, your thinking brain can grab the wheel and steer you towards clarity. These are simple exercises. Even kids can understand them. That's why we try to put this in very simple language. Right? Beautiful. Another example: child with a remote versus adult with control. At first, the emotional brain is like a child mashing buttons on a game controller, reacting wildly. The prefrontal cortex is like a calm adult who gently takes the controller and says, let's play this wisely. With training, the hands-off happens faster and more gracefully. What's the moral? What's the teaching there? Emotions may press buttons fast, which they do in our case, in almost anybody's case. But with practice, the adult part of the brain learns to guide the game, right? These are simple examples, very easy to understand. Here's another one: weather alert versus inner meteorologist. I'm not saying that word right. I'll leave that alone for now. For some reason, I'm not saying it right. So amygdala is weather alert system. Flashes red for every cloud. Danger, storm coming. But the PFC, the inner meteorologist, I don't know why I can't say that word today. Whatever it is, it's fine. You know what that means. Looks at the patterns, sees it's just light rain and cancels the warning. Energy transmutation is this inner forecast correction where we don't, where we don't get swept away by every emotional storm. Right? This is called the inner forecast correction. What's the moral? You can't stop storms from appearing. You cannot stop storms from appearing, but you can learn to read them wisely. It's a beautiful, very simple example. Here's another one. Castle guards versus king's council. The amygdala and the brainstem are like castle guards. Fast, protective, but sometimes trigger happy. The PFC is the royal council. Slow, wise, evaluating long-term consequences. Transmutation happens when the guards pause long enough to let the council decide. Moral, let your inner king or queen decide, not just the guards at the gate. Very simple stuff, right? Very cool stuff. So this is just another little grid here that talks about, the reflex arousal, reprisal pivot, compassionate or creative re-expression. And you can see that some of the technical lingo is there. In the reflex arousal, the dominant neurochemistry is that there is increase in norepinephrine and increase in cortisol. Right? So what's the functional meaning? To mobilize resources for fight and flight response. Right? So the reprisal pivot to reprise is dopamine bursts to ventral striatum. You can see the neurology here. And the functional meaning is that incentivizes new meaning, supports reward prediction error, that sometimes novel is happening, that something novel is happening. Reward prediction error happens. This is the neurochemistry behind it. We don't want to go too much into that right now. And then the phase of compassionate or creative re-expression, the serotonin and oxytocin are increased. What does that do? It quells residual threat circuitry, opens affiliative or imaginative frames. Right? It allows us to reframe the entire situation. Now, having said all of this, this is very interesting stuff. Actually, we're already at 8:43. What I would want to do, I've got a lot of material here as usual, but I do want to go into the quantum quality because we'll run out of time very quickly. The quantum quality for this week is the 30th quality, principle number 30, and it fits exactly in what we're talking about, physical and psychological homeostasis. What does this mean? It's a quantum jump, right? It's a quantum quality. It means that we can choose to be in that state. We can choose that I want to be absolutely in the balanced state. Homeostasis is balance. Year number 2, we want to be in a sustained state of balance. That's our goal. Going through the transmutation process. Now that we're talking about transmutation, we want to be in a state of transmutation. We don't want anything less than that. Those who want to reach excellence, who want to reach mastery, want to reach higher levels in life, yes, we want sustained balance. That means psychological and physical homeostasis. I'm going to talk about that next couple of minutes here. What does that mean? That they're connected. We know this. Mind, brain, body, we know that they're connected. It's a quantum quality. The quantum quality is to resonate with that quality that I am in that state of physical and psychological homeostasis. I am remaining balanced. I'm taking steps that are through the activity of balance. Activities are performed through my balanced state. I'm not going to imbalance myself, even though there's going to be a diversity of experiences. We laugh sometimes, we feel sad sometimes, we feel this, we feel so many things happen, but we always need to come back to our center point of balance. And when we are balanced, there is equanimity. What does that to our body? It helps our physical body, it helps our mind, it helps us to remain in a very interconnected state. And that is where transmutation happens. Transmutation and sustained balance go hand in hand. If I'm not in a state of sustained balance, at least for some time, transmutation becomes very difficult, if not even impossible. Because we need to be have a certain foundation on which to build. You cannot build a 100-story building with a weak foundation. A solid foundation is what we are trying to build. We've been doing that since last year, as well as this year. So it's to build the foundation of balance. Balance means foundation. And then on that foundation, we will be able to transmute and then really build our life in the most fantastic way, further, where all extraneous things that do not belong in our life are completely out of the picture. That is the goal. So that's the basic quantum quality, number 30. A lot can be said about it. We'll do some retreats on that in the future. A lot of fun stuff is coming, but it's application, right? What is it? 2 exercises this week. 5 minutes at a time. What's happening in the next 5 minutes? What is this emotional space, the mental space I'm going to be in? I have to choose that. Whatever it is, it's up to you. It's up to each person. Choose it. Then do it. Then 10 minutes. Do it for a half an hour. Do it for an hour. And of course, there's going to be changes. No emotion just remains like that. It is going to change within a range. To recognize its flow, to be aware of its flow, is all part of the transmutation process. Eventually, the changes that are happening emotionally do not impact us deeply. They just are there. But what happens actually is that the emotion transmutes into a much more evolved state, which is what we'll be talking about in subsequent weeks. All right, so with that, I don't want to put too many ideas. Let's do the closing song, and then we'll open it up for any Q&A if there are any comments or questions, and then we will go from there. There we go.